Hello, everybody, and I'm so happy to see you back again to my channel. Today, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my latest project. Specifically, last night I finished building and calibrating my brand new head preamp. You can see it now right there below the Studer player. And this one is, I call it number 9. I'm not sure if it is really number 9 or number 10, but it is somewhere in that range. So let's call it number 1, number 9, just for the sake of simplicity. And I will tell you a little bit more about its architecture and specific design features. But for now, in terms of its general top-level description, it is based on the balanced audio VKP5 architecture. That's a phono stage, all tube, 10 tube phono stage, dual mana construction with 2 power transformers, 2 totally separate power supplies. It is a very solid architecture overall. And I've built my other head preamps based on similar products. In most cases, the base unit was VKP10 or 12 or P90, different models, but basically similar architecture. And they represent the top of the line. P5 and P6 used to be the lower cost line of products. In many ways, they share the same general architecture, same 10 tubes, dual mana construction, and so on. But there would be smaller filter capacitors, there would be less of energy storage, would be some features missing, like input step-up transformers, and so on. So the question then is, if you could get one based on the P10, why you even bother with the P5 line, which is a lower cost line in this particular system? Well, let me give you a simple analogy. You certainly can say that BMW 850 could be considered top of the line BMW. It's very expensive. It's got tremendous engine. It's a wonderful car. But on the other hand, many people will say that Series 1 and Series 2 provide much better driving experience. And the reason is very simple, because they're much lighter cars and they provide much stronger feel of the road, and therefore many enthusiasts would prefer those lighter cars to the top of the line behemoths. Some of that is in play here. For example, the top of the line models, later ones, use output transformers. And I do love transformers. I use a lot of them in my designs. But they also represent some challenges. For example, you have to be very careful with the source impedance, or your low frequency response goes down. And you just have to design the circuit differently. The capacitor-coupled designs, on the other hand, are simpler. You have to follow simpler rules of interfacing. And if done properly, they can provide a wonderful low-frequency response. That's just one example. There may be others. And the net result is, I think those lower end models have a little bit lighter sound. In some sense, reminiscent of the Series 1 or 2 BMW. It is very musical sound, but perhaps it doesn't have the heavy foundation of the top of the line models, and the sound becomes a little bit more free floating, if you will. At least this is my feeling about those models. Another very important element here is that the P5 line has single-ended input. And I know you don't have to convince me that balance has tremendous benefits in some areas, except in the area of interfacing the phono cartridge or the tape head with the circuit. And this could be the subject of long discussion, but the bottom line is that I do prefer the sound of single-ended connection in some of those cases. And like I said, interfacing with the phono cartridge or tape head may be one of those cases. It also provides lower noise connection, which is very important when dealing with such a small signals. Yes, I know there is some controversy about common mode rejection, but when you're dealing with 3 or 2 foot long cables and well-designed system, this is not a serious consideration. So with that in mind, I decided to build this one based on the P5 architecture and not the P10 for this simple reason that it's a single-ended input and it is lighter on its feet. And therefore I was hoping for very, very wonderful sound. I built this unit around my custom, I call it EQ5 circuit board, and you can see those 2 green lights. That's a circuit board installed in the unit, and on the front panel you'll see the selector switch, which allows you to select any one of those 5 equalizations, starting with RIAA, then go to 7.5 inch, 15 inch knob, 15 inch IAC, and of course my favorite one, the 30 inch selection. So let's take a look at the internal structure of this unit. We'll start with the input connectors. You have 2 RCA connectors here feeding the signal inside, and you have balanced outputs because regardless of the input circuit, the whole internal architecture of this unit is fully balanced, except for the input connection. You see the 10 tubes, and you have this optional power supply circuit board. You don't have to have this one, you can do without, but it's a nice addition. And of course you have this equalization board. And the way I decided to mount it in this unit was not by bolting it to the back panel like I've done in some other models, but mounting it on top of the super pack. To me, it has some advantages. It can be done either way. The board will work in either configuration. But here you have immediate access to adjustment screws. And additional benefit is, with the top cover on, those screws or trim pads are visible through the top cover gaps, openings. So you don't have to remove the top cover to do the adjustment. You can do it on a completed unit. We see output capacitors here. On larger models, you have output transformers, but this one is more direct, more simple design with output capacitors. And the size of this capacitors is 3.5 microfarad or 3.3 microfarads, which means that as long as you keep your input impedance of your preamp to somewhere between at least of 10 kilo ohm, you're going to be fine for low frequency response. As I mentioned before, this is a dual mono construction. You have separate power transformers, and the channels don't share any single wire. Now, one natural question is that since this particular model doesn't have input step-up transformers, what's the situation with the gain when you deal with such a low output transducer as the tape head is? Well, situation is not so bad at all. Of course, here we have what I call medium output heads. But if you look at the volume control position on my preamp, I'm riding at about 50. And that's a 50 out of 140 possible. So that's a fairly low setting. That means this preamp produces more than enough signal to drive the rest of my system. The volume control of 50 is actually on the low side for this particular system configuration. Ideally, I would like to be able to run volume control in the area between 60 and 100. That's where it sounds best. But again, like I said, this is a medium gain tape heads, and the gain of this preamp right now is set to high. You have two positions for the gain, high and low. And you can switch to low and you will drop it by about 6 dB, but it sounds better with wide open high gain. So that's why I'm keeping it that way. Here we have a better view of the input tubes. There's a gain switch down below, and those are input loading selectors, which is a very, very important and nice feature for the head preamp. Well, for medium inductance tape heads, you're probably okay with just a standard 47 kilo ohm impedance. But if your inductance goes up, and there are some heads which have 600 or even 700 millihenry inductances, then you need larger impedance. And you can control it from this section. You can set it to pretty much anything you want. How do you do it? Here it is done by switching, but you can also put a trim pot there. And trim pot is nice if you're using flux loop on your tape head, and you can monitor for the oscillation peaks and control that peak through selection of input resistance. Like I said, equalization circuit has 5 different selections, all controllable through this switch. For this particular video, we're using 15-inch IAC, which is this one. For this video, I selected one of my Studer's A810s as a drive vehicle for the simple reason that this is a wonderful machine. It has very good mechanics, very high quality tape heads, and it also has all speeds I need. In this case, it has 30 inches, 15 and 7.5. I know some 810s don't have 4 speeds, but this one does. It also has 3.75 speed, which I never use. Right now this machine has all audio circuits removed, so it only provides a direct connection to the outside world between its tape head and the jacks on the back. And now you see this preamp neatly tucked under the machine in this equipment rack. So it creates very, very nice, convenient package. You can roll it around. You can switch to different speeds, different equalizations, pretty much on the fly. What it doesn't have is 4-track capability. Well, I don't have, or I don't use many 4-track tapes, so that's okay. Pretty much almost all my tape world is built on 2 tracks. But I have other machines that are capable of 4 tracks, so that's not such a big loss here. Now, the big question here is, how does it sound? Yes, it looks fine and it is convenient in its selection, but what about the sound? And so far, I love it. I don't have enough cockpit time with this machine yet, but my early listening indicates this is going to be one of the keepers. So that's a very, very good topology overall, and I do recommend it for somebody who is considering building his own tape preamp. In some sense, I even recommend the P5 based architecture more than I recommend the P10 or P12. There are some pitfalls with the bigger models, and this one is simpler. It is easier to understand, and it works exceedingly well, in my opinion. And now let's hear some beautiful music. Once again, I'm using one of my favorite remote controls. It works like a charm. So this is the story of the number 9. Like I said, I'm not sure if it is really number 9, could be number 10, but really, is it really that important? And I have to say, I do love its sound. I have to do a little bit more listening. But this combination of Revox, tape heads with this electronics is very, very musical. The question about noise, it's not there. I'm listening to about a volume setting of about 50, and I put my ear to the tweeter and to my horn speakers, and I hear nothing. In fact, I have to turn volume up about 40 counts to hear noticeable noise or noise I can hear from the tweeter. So that, to me, that's plenty quiet. Which means don't be afraid of the single-ended connection. This connection is easy to do. Even if your tape deck has balanced output, you can still connect it to your single-ended preamp, and it sounds marvelously well, at least to my ears. Obviously, I'm not selling this product, I'm not promoting it. This is just my observation from the home project I just completed. So I would encourage you to do something similar, because the improvement you get over the standard internal electronics on pretty much any tape machine out there is staggering. If you do your job right, you will be shocked at the improvement you get, and your reference tapes will sound different now. Let me know if you have any questions. Whether you modify this particular head preamp or phono preamp, whatever you want to call. I'm confused now between all those names, before modification and after the modification. But whatever you do, please do it right. And if you do it right, you will be rewarded by wonderful sound. So with that in mind, as always, please stay well. That's the most important thing in life. And take care of your loved ones. See you next time. Goodbye.